Hello, my wonderful friends, and welcome back to our Entitled People. You already know how it goes here. This is the place where some folks act like the universe revolves around them and everyone else is just background noise. Today's episode features HOA nightmares, troublesome neighbors who finally get a taste of their own medicine, and one clever OP who finds a hilarious way to deal with a reckless teenager. Buckle up, because these stories are good. As always, feel free to share your own posts or email them in. Let's get started. From 2015 through early 2018, my then-girlfriend, now wife, and I bounced from apartment to apartment. The constant moving wore us down quickly, but in May 2018, fortune smiled on us. My best friend's parents had a condo tenant move out after more than 10 years. Since I was close with the family and even handled their taxes, I got first dibs. This was extra special to me because I had spent most of my teenage years hanging out at that very condo with my best friend, Dan. Moving in felt like going home, only this time I'd be creating new memories with my wife. The building had 8 units, each with 2 assigned parking spaces. It also had an HOA with the usual rules, fees, and shared areas. Ours was the only rented unit. The other 7 were owner-occupied by the same families I remembered from my youth. One neighbor, however, stood out. A woman I'll call Karen. Nobody liked her because she had a talent for making any interaction difficult or unpleasant. She lived alone, meaning one of her 2 parking spots always sat empty. In October 2018, she rang my doorbell in a frenzy, demanding to know whether a car parked in her unused spot belonged to me or anyone I knew. It didn't, and I told her so. But she left flustered and unhappy. I shrugged it off. Later that month, while I was away on a trip, my wife came home to find a lime green Jeep with oversized tires parked in our assigned spot. She noticed Karen's second space was empty, but remembered the tantrum Karen threw the last time someone dared to use it. Instead of risking that drama, my wife parked directly behind the Jeep in a T-shape and left a polite note. "I parked behind you. Please come to Unit A and I'll move my car so you can leave." An hour later, the doorbell rang again. Karen, fuming. She yelled at my wife, calling her immature and insisting that the Jeep belonged to her friend, who was just here for a few minutes. Then she sneered, "You'd better remember that you're just renters here." She stormed off, and rather than knock on our door to ask us to move, her friend, the Jeep owner, drove over the shared front lawn, tearing up the grass and flower beds. All the while, Karen's empty spot sat untouched. Fast forward. In 2019, my girlfriend and I got engaged. By 2021, we were married. That October, almost exactly 3 years after the parking incident, we bought the condo from Dan's parents. Then, in 2022, the long-term HOA president stepped down, and I was elected to replace him. The very next day, I crossed paths with Karen and couldn't resist saying, "So much for just being renters, huh?" The look on her face was priceless, part shock, part fury. Maybe she was annoyed that I'd bought the unit, or maybe that I was now HOA president after only a few years of living there while she'd been around for decades. Either way, her reaction is seared into my memory. Now, I didn't buy a home or run for HOA president just to spite her. That would be ridiculous. But the irony is delicious. These days, when we see her, my wife and I give her a cheerful, fake smile and a, "Hi, how are you?" She never replies, which only makes it sweeter. And fun fact, Karen hasn't rung our doorbell since, and no one has ever tried to steal our parking spot again. Apparently, crossing the HOA president isn't high on her to-do list. What an outcome, right? You just know she's quietly fuming every time she sees us. Now, on to the next story. OP here lived in a condo where each resident had assigned parking, plus a few visitor spaces. One afternoon, he came home to find a large SUV parked in his spot. Thinking it might be a guest who'd made an honest mistake, he asked the driver how long he'd be. The man snapped, 45 minutes. OP politely pointed out that visitor spots were available nearby, but the driver refused. In a shrill, entitled tone, He declared, "I'm a realtor, and I'm showing this house. Property management told me I could park here." Deciding not to argue, OP simply said okay and parked elsewhere. But he wasn't about to let it slide. From his window facing the lot, he set up a speaker and blasted hardcore rap for 30 minutes while the realtor tried to give his tour. Unsurprisingly, the potential buyers decided the home and neighborhood weren't for them. Mission accomplished. OP hopes the realtor wasted his afternoon and maybe learned a lesson. Don't be rude to strangers. And finally, a third. Tale. While house-sitting for his cousin in an upscale neighborhood, another OP dealt with an HOA busybody. His cousin was having a porch built, so the construction crew left a trailer out front for their tools. One evening, a woman walking her dogs rang the bell. Just as OP peeked out the window, one of her dogs relieved itself on the lawn. He waited until she finished, then opened the door. The woman introduced herself as an HOA board member and immediately launched into a rant about the trailer being an egregious violation of community rules. She threatened fines unless it was removed right away. OP calmly explained it belonged to the crew, not him, and couldn't be moved at 6:30 on a Friday. She insisted he do something. Finally fed up, OP asked, "By the way, what's the fine for not picking up after your dog?" Her face went red. She stammered about planning to grab it anyway and quickly retreated. Classic HOA hypocrisy at its finest. I told her, "Oh, I'm sure you were planning to pick it up. I'd appreciate it if you did because my cousin has been convinced that a neighbor keeps letting their dog use his lawn as a bathroom. He even set up a camera in the window to catch whoever's doing it." At that, the woman grew flustered, quickly muttered that I should tell the patio crew to hurry, and stormed off in a huff. A tiny win, but satisfying all the same. Moments like that remind me why I'm grateful not to live in an HOA-controlled neighborhood. The rules and egos in those places are absurd. Some people get the smallest bit of authority and it instantly goes to their heads, making you wonder if they've got anything meaningful in their lives. One commenter shared their own story. "I once lived in an HOA, and the woman in charge lived close enough to keep constant tabs on our rental. I was 21 at the time, and she called the cops so often that even they were visibly irritated. At one point, an officer knocked on our door only to find 4 adults quietly watching a movie, not even late at night. He told us to steer clear of her so he wouldn't get more nuisance calls. It was clear they wanted us gone just because we were young. She'd harass us in the driveway, complain about where we parked, accuse us of leaking fluids, even say our exhaust was too loud. Eventually, she claimed we were ripping out appliances and destroying the backyard, which was a blatant lie. This woman would literally peer into our living room, desperate to find a reason to fine us. She tried, but I ignored every single notice and refused to pay a dime. When she dragged her HOA husband into it too, that was the last straw. Never again will I live in an HOA. I'm a 44-year-old woman living in a large, upper-middle-class neighborhood with about 75 homes built between the 70s and 90s. There's no HOA, just a neighborhood association and crime watch, neither of which I'm involved with. My husband and I bought our home in 2021, and most of the people we've met have been very welcoming. Since my kids are teenagers, we haven't really immersed ourselves in the community. I do notice people from other areas often park near my house just to walk through our neighborhood. 2 years ago, we adopted a puppy. I mapped out the distance around the border streets, and the loop came to about 3.2 miles, which became my regular walking route. But when the local park closed for renovations, I started exploring more of the inner streets to give the dog new sights and smells. This let me meet new neighbors, though usually just quick greetings since I walk with earbuds in. Most interactions were pleasant until recently. A few days ago, while walking down a quiet, unfamiliar street, I saw a man in his 60s standing by his garage. I smiled and waved, only realizing he was talking when I took an earbud out. He barked, "Keep your fucking dog off my grass." Surprised by the hostility, I laughed nervously and replied, "He hasn't been anywhere near your lawn, but okay." I started walking off, shaking my head, when he shouted louder, "I don't care, it's my yard, and I don't want that mud on it." I was too stunned to stay quiet. "Well, I don't want some bloated stranger yelling orders at me either. If he ever does poop in your yard, you can say something. Until then, go fuck yourself." I marched away, furious, calling my husband. The irony? I was literally holding a bag of my dog's poop because I'm not the kind of jerk who leaves it behind. Not long after, I noticed a black Suburban rolling slowly at a stop sign. It was the same man. He sped up like he wanted to run me or my dog down. I jumped onto someone's lawn as he roared past, flipping me off and shouting, "Fuck you, bitch!" My dog was confused, but I was seething. I knew his house was empty, so I went back, opened the bag, and dumped the contents right in the center of his driveway, positioned exactly where his tires would roll through it. 4 solid turds. But even that didn't feel like enough. Still, burning with anger, I looked up his address when I got home, found his name and socials, and discovered his birthday was in 2 days. Perfect. I called a friend, someone just as unhinged as me, who owns 2 massive dogs. She was more than happy to donate some supplies. Between her dogs and mine, I gathered a generous collection. Then I bought a bubble-lined manila envelope, Easter-style crinkle paper, and gloves. Carefully, I filled the envelope with dog crap, topping it off with confetti so the contents weren't immediately obvious. I scrawled, "Happy Birthday" across the front in huge letters, and slipped it into his paper box early in the morning on his big day. Later, I waited at a cross street until the mail truck came. Sure enough, the man retrieved his envelope and opened it halfway up his driveway. From where I stood, I heard, "What the f... Oh my God, this is disgusting." He flung his hand, trying to shake off the mess, and I nearly doubled over laughing. I bolted before he could scan the street, my heart pounding but satisfied. That was 2 days ago, and I'm still laughing every time I think about it. Petty? Absolutely. But considering he chased me with his car and screamed obscenities, I'd say he earned every bit of it. About a month ago, I moved into another neighborhood, and there are a few important details. My house has neither a driveway nor a garage, so street parking is my only option. The area isn't governed by an HOA. There are no permits or restrictions, and no nearby businesses, so anyone parking here is either a resident or visiting one. Usually, I find a spot near my house without issue, but one neighbor 4 houses down acts like they own the curb. They place cones to block off space for 3 cars, yet I've never seen them use it. They already have a long driveway and detached garage, both empty. The house itself looks almost abandoned, the shades always drawn, no visible lights, no signs of life. One evening, I had no choice but to park there. I moved 2 cones onto the sidewalk, left my car, and the next morning found the cones back behind my vehicle. I had to move them again just to drive off. A week later, the exact thing happened. And again yesterday, for the 3rd time. This morning, when I walked my dog, I discovered a neatly printed note on my windshield. This plate number has been reported to parking enforcement. A note was left saying, "We encourage you to park in front of your own residence out of consideration for your neighbors. Do not park here ever again." Naturally, this irritated me. First of all, if you truly care about being considerate to neighbors, then don't block access to public parking spaces that your neighbors are legally entitled to use. Secondly, you're now threatening me for parking legally. If this is the fight you want to start, then fine. I'll make sure you regret it. The first step I took was calling parking enforcement myself. I explained the entire situation, and the woman on the phone laughed. She told me my neighbors had no authority whatsoever to leave me a notice like that. As I suspected, she also gave me the number for a Bureau of Street Services investigator who could come out, inspect the situation, and issue them a citation. The second thing I did was move my girlfriend's car. She already had her Tesla parked in front of our house, but I moved it right in front of the cones. So now there were 2 cars in the spot they didn't want occupied. The bonus? With her. Tesla parked there. The built-in cameras would capture anything shady they might try against our vehicles. Finally, there's the third idea I'm considering. If the citation route falls through, I might buy the ugliest, cheapest old car I can find, register it with the DMV as a planned, non-operational vehicle, and then keep it permanently parked right in front of their house. Honestly, the only reason I can imagine they don't want cars there is purely aesthetic. They don't even use those spots for their own vehicles, and it's not like random outsiders come around regularly to park, so I see no valid excuse for their behavior. You guys know I love a good parking story, and props to OP for standing up for themselves. I mean, in most places, you're legally allowed to park anywhere on a public street, right? For a neighbor to place cones outside just to keep a section of the curb reserved for appearances, yeah, that's peak entitlement. Now, about OP's third potential move. In my city, leaving a car parked in the same spot without moving it for long stretches of time will get you an expensive ticket. Still, it's funny how many commenters suggested simply taking the free cones. Speaking of entitled neighbors, let me tell you another story. About a year ago, one of mine bought his son a brand new Mustang GT for his first car. From day one, the kid's been tearing up and down the street day and night, basically turning our quiet neighborhood into his personal racetrack. Tragically, he once hit another neighbor's dog. She refused to involve the police, even though I had the incident recorded on my security cameras. I have 3 young children, and for the past year I've been terrified they might be next. The boy is arrogant, too. When I confronted him, he brushed me off, and his parents were even worse. A week after that conversation, his father deliberately peeled out right in front of my house just to make a point. I had no choice but to call the police, who eventually forced him to stop. Our HOA rejected speed bumps, so another mom suggested putting up signs everywhere and blasting the kid on social media. I doubted signs would do much, and I even considered sabotaging his car. But then, a neighbor discovered a child at play safety sign shaped like an actual child. We all bought one, and soon other drivers slowed down so much that traffic jams started forming. I placed my sign near a bush at the bend of the road in front of my yard. A few weeks later, we woke up to a massive crash. The Mustang had slammed into a power pole. The kid crawled out of the wrecked car as I dialed 911 and ran over to check on him, only to be cursed out as he ranted about his car. When the cops arrived and asked if he'd been drinking, he barked, "No, pig, I haven't. It's this stupid bitch's fault I wrecked my car." He then started advancing toward me until an officer restrained him. Calming down for a moment, he suddenly turned back toward me and shouted, "It's her stupid sign! I thought that thing was one of her kids about to run in the road." While he ranted, the ambulance arrived. He refused treatment, snapped at the paramedics, and cared more about the wreck than himself. The officer administered a sobriety test, which he failed miserably. He was promptly arrested, charged with misdemeanor DUI and reckless driving, and later released on recognizance without his parents even needing to post bail. The following day, he limped over, apologized for being so obnoxious, and then went back home to recover. I simply thanked him for the apology and shut my door. Hopefully, the experience taught him something. Because honestly, while having a fast car as a teenager might feel exciting, it comes with responsibility. And judging from his father's behavior, it's not hard to see where he learned his attitude. If it hadn't been for the sign, it could just as easily have been an actual child or any innocent neighbor hit by that Mustang. And that, my friends, wraps up another wild round of our entitled people. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, consider joining so you don't miss more outrageous stories. And if you skipped the last video, it was an R malicious compliance episode featuring bad bosses getting wrecked by their employees. It's worth checking out. As always, Stevie Boy and I will catch you in the next one. We love you.